Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes.
I'll do a roll call vote. So
Mhm.
it's 6:34, and we're meeting remotely due to the COVID virus. The purpose of this special meeting is to have possible action on the school's return to learn plan, and that is regarding this pandemic. I will name off the board members, and please respond by saying here. Downs,
Here.
Smith,
Here.
Stacy Anderson,
Here.
Ashley Anderson,
Here.
Sarah Geiser. Here. Schmitz. Hauser.
Here.
Okay.
Okay. So I will now call the meeting to order.
Motion to
And we've
approve
had-
the agenda. Motion
Second.
to approve the agenda.
Down to approve agenda. Smith seconded. Is that correct?
Yes.
We'll do a roll call. Stacy Anderson.
Here. Yes.
Ashley Anderson.
Yes.
Schmitz. I can see her, but I think she was maybe muted.
I can't.
Okay. Is that an aye, Sarah, to approve the agenda?
Yeah, I'm sorry, it cut out, Mary Beth. I couldn't hear what you guys were asking. So, but yes, in favor of approving the agenda.
Downs.
Yes.
Smith.
Aye.
Sarah Geiser.
Yes.
Hauser.
Yes.
So it's unanimous on approving the agenda.
Mhm. Okay, third item, do we have any communication from the public?
Yes, I have requested communication from the public. Can you hear me?
Yes. So go ahead and identify yourself and your address.
My name is Janine Chowdhury. I'm at 9918 Iltis Drive in Urbandale. I am speaking today on behalf of Urbandale Education Association as co-president. I also am a mother of a middle school and high school child here in Urbandale and teach ELP at the middle school. So my statement is as follows. As the return to learn plans come before the board, I feel a need to speak on behalf of teachers and nurses at UCSD who are our frontline workers. Urbandale has a need for explicit details for health and safety of teachers and nurses, resulting in long-term sustainable school systems. The Department of Ed released guidelines last week, and UEA agrees with ISEA, Iowa State Education Association. This is the statement from Mike Baranek, the ISEA president. Iowa Department of Ed's reopening guidance is inconsistent with CDC guidance, common sense, and good public policy, and we cannot recommend support, end quote. Our work of school is woven so tightly and so thoroughly into our city of Urbandale. A successful return to learn will take leadership at all levels and relentless listening to teachers and nurses. It will take a detailed design that reaches from the top federal level, passes the Iowa Department of Ed minimal recommendations, and reaches down to teachers and nurses who will carry the most hazard of all. The following are voices of UCSD's membership. If I wear a mask through personal choice or by direction from the district, how will I teach letter sounds, such as the sound difference between I and E? How will students wash hands if there is not a sink in many classrooms? What is the cleaning schedule? Will teachers or students be cleaning desks? How will teachers plan for double classes, online and 50% capacity without additional planning time? What is the plan to provide coverage in the event of substitute shortages? Will this continue to fall on the shoulders of classroom teachers and small group instruction teachers? How much notice can teachers with daycare needs expect to have in order to provide for their own family's safety while they work? If staff wear masks to protect students, who provides PPE to protect staff? And finally, who provides technology support for staff and students throughout the district. For example, a teacher keeps getting dropped from Zoom call meetings. Who can help troubleshoot? To be sure, teachers and nurses would like nothing more than to work. What can we do now to keep staff healthy and able? What do our staff need in order to do their work with our community's children? Association staff, school board, administration, and community with humility and expectations of best intentions. Together we've got this, we can do this. That's my statement.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Okay, so I'm going to preface this. I didn't necessarily plan to facilitate this meeting. I wasn't terribly prepared, so I'm going to rely on district personnel who might have some insights into whatever is coming up to jump in and clarify the questions that people might bring up. I am hoping, as Janine just expressed, that we can clarify, kind of come to some agreement on how we really don't want to go forward, because we don't really have a choice. This is not ideal in any case. So at this point, I will be bringing it up, but I have very little input or on the content of most of the recommendations. So
Catherine,
just realize that.
Is there any additional feedback from the public?
I'm taking that's a no.
Okay, my apologies. With just so many people on the call, I wanted to make sure that folks had an opportunity.
So at this point, we'll move into the action items. Item A is the return to learn plan updates. It might be nice to, if anyone wants to jump in here and give some of the background. I know that we have been less than thrilled with some of the guidance from the Department of Ed. And so that hasn't been particularly helpful. I would invite anyone who wants to do further explanation to do that before we actually make a.
Sorry, this is Denise. I was just going to offer that I can provide us with some of the background and kind of walk the board through some of the documentation, but I did not mean to interrupt you.
There's 100 of us on here. That's going to happen. So go ahead.
Okay, super. So first of all, yes to everything Catherine just said, yes to what Janine just said. I think it's safe to say that we are working hard now to try to figure out what to do with the guidance that we received last Thursday, what that means, and that's really what tonight is partially about. So I'll just kind of back you up, give you some timeline, and then if everybody's okay with it, I'll share my screen. I'm going to share documents that are in the board packet, but kind of help highlight parts of what I'm talking about as I do that. I think that it might help everybody understand what all of the words in those documents are trying to talk to us about. So the district leadership team, made up of Steve Bass, Mary Beth Fast, Lauren DeCrife, Krista Carlisle, Carrie Schlueter, Ashley Myers, Shauna Eshelman, and myself, began meeting on May 11th to address the categories of the Return to Learn guidance that was released by the Department of Ed that Friday before. So that would have been on May 8th. The district leadership team spent the first couple of weeks creating action planning templates and gaining committee members for the planning committees while starting to work through the first sets of considerations in the leadership category. So I'll show you what I mean by the considerations, how you can tell what's a Department of Ed consideration and what's a UCSD action step here in a few minutes. The Department of Ed, so I think that there's a clear distinction that we need to make. The Department of Ed has made it really clear that they have kind of two things coming toward us. The return to learn plans, which is what we started on May 11th. And then they made a distinction between that and return to school guidance, which a few weeks ago, they promised to us on July 1st. I think virtually everybody on the Zoom knows that guidance actually was released last Thursday. And I think that what you'll discover as we go through our work is that guidance did not provide as much clarity and guidance as we thought that it was going to. And so I think now we're kind of on the side of, so the department has said that they will provide more guidance, and we're not really in a position to wait for that any longer. And so that's part of what tonight is about, is figuring out where board members lie, where their opinions are, how they're feeling about some of the things that we simply don't have true clarity around, so that then those recommendations can be made, but also to know that those recommendations are more in alignment with what you're thinking. So we're focusing first on return to learn plans, and the return to learn plans are really about ensuring that we're ready to deliver instruction in the delivery models that we choose to be ready for. So I'm going to share, oh, hey Dina, can you let me share my screen, please?
Yep, let me change that, Denise, just 1 second.
Sorry, I should
No,
have
you're good.
tested.
Nope, you're good, just a second. Okay, let me know if that helps.
Yep, it does.
Okay, thanks.
There we go. Okay, so this is the UCSD Return to Learn Delivery Models and Plan Overview document that is in the board packet. And so you can see here at the top of that document, we have 3 delivery models: on-site, hybrid, and required continuous learning. And so when the Return to Learn guidance came to us on May 8th, they told us that we could prepare for 3 delivery models. So the required continuous learning would be like the online or remote learning. And the key difference between what happened this spring and what will happen in 2020, 2021 is that if we go into remote learning, it will be required. Students must participate. It will not be the voluntary model that we were thrown into this spring. And so in all of the guidance, this is the only delivery model that we are required to have. And I think that's because if we go over here to on-site, the assumption is we generally know how to do on-site, though we know that that's going to look different this year. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of the considerations that are having to be made to have for any of these models around assessing student knowledge, figuring out where gaps exist, particularly due to the last quarter of the year being cut off. And then this middle delivery model, the hybrid delivery model, is an option that we were told we could prepare for in consideration of like a social distancing type of need, where only half of the students are at a school site at any given time. When students were not on site, then they must be engaged in remote or in required continuous learning or remote online. Okay. So I should also make sure that you know that when we talk about on-site learning, there is an exception now that was clarified by Senate file, I'm going to say 2310, and then Krista can tell me if I have the number wrong, but I believe it was Senate file 2310. And it clarified for us that we are able, if we're on site, that we are able to provide required continuous learning, so this kind of remote option for students whose families are not comfortable sending them. If it's for a health reason, we are obligated to provide that. If it's because a family is not comfortable, we can provide that. And so our district leadership team has been operating under the assumption that we would want to provide that if we are in a situation where we're on site and there are families that are not comfortable sending their children back. The other assumption that we have made is that it would be smart for us to have a hybrid model available in case we were in a situation where we would need to be in this required continuous learning for a long period of time, but we're able to see students at about a 50% capacity. And so I just want to be clear that the one that is required is here. That's what we have to prepare for. So the return to learn delivery models are these three. We have been planning across all of the categories of the return to learn plan in thinking about all three of the delivery models. So the categories read down the left side, and that's leadership, infrastructure, health and safety, Iowa academic standards, social emotional behavior health, equity for students with individualized education plans, equity for English learners, equity for at-risk, and equity for talented and gifted. So that's kind of the gist of return to learn plans. But when you hear about a return to learn plan that is due July 1st, that is not all of these separate plans that we have attached in here. Though these plans inform the plan that is due to the state on July 1st. So Krista has put in, we did work on this as a team this morning to help Steve be ready to submit this on Wednesday. And there are a few pieces that we're hoping to gain some clarity about tonight that might adjust. So this is the return to learn plan that appears in CASA. CASA is the Iowa Department of Education's kind of website that houses all the data and information that they need from schools. So this is the place where we submit all of our plans for everything. And so this, I just want to walk you through. I'm not going to give you, we're not going to dive into every bit of this. I just want you to see the difference between our return to learn plans that we're working on in our committees that sort of look not done, but they're done enough to answer the questions in CASA. So this is what we had to know by July 1st. So it starts with assurances. I think there's 15 assurances related to required continuous learning. So when we are in remote or online learning, we have to ensure that these things happen, that federal laws, state laws, rules and regulations are followed. Things like we have to have teachers meet their same Board of Educational Examiner licensing requirements. Our standards, our content requirements all have to be the same. If we're online, they keep stressing it has to be the same rigor as what we would provide in person. We have to ensure equitable access and services. If we offer AP, it has to be approved by the AP board. These are basically saying to us over and over again, when you're online, you have to do all the same things. You have to ensure that all the same things are happening as you would if you were in person. And so there's one interesting one right here, Assurance 14. Applicant understands that the return to learn plan must include provisions for in-person instruction and provide that in-person instruction is the presumed method of instruction. So that has had us assuming that that means we should be in person unless Governor Proclamation, Iowa Department of Public Health, something like that tells us that we wouldn't be. The next parts of this go through, and basically this section is kind of wanting to know, like, did we use the resources that the Department of Ed gave us, that sort of thing. Then it goes through those categories. So return to learn leadership, who's on our return to learn committees? How are we going to communicate when we need to change delivery models with our families? Data that we're going to follow. Then it goes into infrastructure. So you kind of see how it's really check boxes and yes or no. And this will be submitted on July 1st. A PDF of this will be on our website shortly thereafter. So I would say July 2nd, 3rd, somewhere in there. And then this plan, though, can be modified at any time. So if we submit on July 1st and then decide on July 10th that we've changed an answer on here, that can happen. So nothing about this July 1st deadline is final. Okay. All right. So I'm going to look to Crystal real quick and just see if there's anything else about this CASA submission of what the return to learn plan looks like that we're submitting to the state that we need to talk about there.
The only thing I would add to that is that there are questions in here that are in our plans to do. So for example, there was a question about completing a module provided by Heartland AEA regarding health and safety. Yes, that is part of our professional learning plan for teachers as well as administrators. So we have checked yes. There are also other questions that ask, what will we be doing? And so again, anticipating when we're back to learning, when we're back in session, what will we be using, not only initially, but throughout the year?
I have a question, a clarification question, if that's okay.
Sure.
Denise, you mentioned that your reading of the Department of Ed's guidance is that schools should go back in person with no hybrid model or students learning remotely unless it's a safety question or some specific families who choose not to have their kids go. And then our hybrid models would be triggered if there was an outbreak or something at the school. And I think there's some confusion around that. Do you have any idea when we're going to have, or you know, should we be talking to our attorneys to get clarification on what that means? I'll just say I'm grateful for all of your work. I'm really disappointed in the Department of Ed's guidelines. I think it's negligent. And so I feel like we're going to spend a lot of our work and you're going to spend a lot of your time trying to make up for that. So could you speak a little bit more about what the state is expecting school to look like the first day?
Yep, so we actually don't have super clear guidance on that. We're basing that on webinars with the Department of Ed, statements that they have made about the intent of the legislative session, like all the stuff that they passed around this was that we were back in school. The other thing is that just this assurance number 14, to us, that's what that says. Applicant understands that the return to learn plan must include provisions for in-person instruction and provide that in-person instruction is the presumed method of instruction. I don't think we know anything more than what that says, and just the words that have been said in those DE webinars. I don't know that our district leadership team has a really good sense of what that should be this far out. You know, we're still several weeks from rolling green, and we're still 2 months away from the traditional calendar. And
Denise.
knowing that the landscape is changing pretty quickly right now, I don't think that our team has a good sense of where they're going to land on all that. Yes,
Denise,
Krista.
I would also jump in and say, in a webinar that the DE did right after the legislative session adjourned, they addressed several components of Senate File 2310, which was passed just before the legislature went into adjournment. And it's a pretty giant bill in terms of all of the different things and nuances that it includes. So this was presented to districts, to us in this DE webinar by DE personnel, knowing full well that it hasn't been through the rules making process, that there's still some interpretation that has to happen. But it speaks to this number 14 that Denise has on their screen, requires school districts and accredited non-public schools to the extent possible provide in-person instruction for core academic subjects. The other thing it does is it grants local boards the authority to close a district or a school site if there is an emergency proclamation in effect from the governor. So it really does push a lot of local control. I did read, and I wish I had it pulled up right now, but IASB sent out a letter to their constituents, it was either Friday or yesterday, that they, as well as Roar Korn from SAI, had met with Director Lebo, and additional clarification is coming, is what we know at this point.
Okay, so for clarification, just for myself, because I just want to make sure I have this down. Mm-hmm. The current understanding that we have is that that we're going to be opening full classes up until the moment we have, and do we know if it's an outbreak or just a single case or what?
Yep, that's a great question. And that was one of the things in this IASB communication that I read that is being asked for, are what are the specific metrics, or what is the decision-making process that districts and boards should use? Is it one case? Is it 10? What's a cluster? So Ashley, I can't answer your question, but that's exactly what's being asked for, is what are the criteria that would lead to that decision and allow us to make an informed decision.
And then to understand the second part with the having to have the governor issue a proclamation of some sort. If she doesn't issue a proclamation, but we have a case or an outbreak, I'm certainly not a lawyer. Sorry.
And I wouldn't want to speak to that Senate file, but the way I understand it and have seen the communication since this PowerPoint is if there is no emergency declaration in place, we do not have the authority to close schools.
Do we have so I've talked to a few folks on school boards in other districts, and they're interpreting this differently than we are. And I was just curious, what are do we know overall the ramifications of anything, or do we just have to wait? This is not very clear. I apologize. This is one of those things that I wish we had answers on, and I'm really frustrated that we don't. Not at you in general, but what are the ramifications that could potentially come down if we, as a district, don't feel comfortable doing the full open, just due to a sheer amount of children in a building?
I pulled up the statement from what's her name, Lisa Bartusek, who is the executive director of the Iowa Association of School Boards, and I'm just going to read this paragraph to you. The guidance states that school boards, if the governor proclaims a public health disaster, are authorized by state law, Senate File 2310, to close a school district or attendance center and move to their continuous remote online learning plan. Decisions to move to continuous remote learning are to be made at the local level in collaboration with public health. IASB and other education organizations had requested clear criteria and metrics for boards to use in local decisions. We agree that the transition to continuous remote learning for public health reasons must be made on the specific fact pattern of exposures or outbreaks, and understand the need to work with local public health officials on a situational basis. So again, I'm not an attorney, and I have not read the language from Senate File 2310. I've only read statements such as these, but it sounds like we don't have a lot of discretion to be able to close a school site or even go into remote continuous learning if there is no public health declaration.
I read the same thing the same way,
Okay.
but I was hoping that maybe
Yeah.
someone had more
Crossing our
info.
fingers. Yeah. Yep.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Okay.
So I
So
guess
in
to frame this back to what we're talking about tonight, the board is not discussing necessarily what school is going to look like on day one. We're discussing what happens if after day one, a bunch of things happen. There's an emergency declaration, an outbreak. We have decided for the safety of our students, we have to transition into one of these options. Is that right?
Well, we are right now, based on all of this, our district leadership team has been assuming that we're starting in person, but we also know that there's a long time before that happens. And so these 3 delivery models, the idea is that we are planned for all 3 of these, that we can pivot and be agile and be in whichever one we need to be in as quickly as possible. I don't know that we're going to be agile enough to pivot like from one day to the next, but within a couple days that we would be able to move to where we needed to be. And so decision-making wise tonight, we're asking the board only, well, I shouldn't say only, but as far as all of this goes, we coming up in an action item under this. So right now, this section, no action. We just want to hear conversation and answer questions and help you know what we know. The item underneath this around the hybrid learning model, we've provided the data, the pros and cons around the 2 hybrid models that we have vetted and think are possible. And so we will be asking the board to help us or to make that decision so that we can start working on, if this is each of those hybrid models requires a lot of very different work. And so in order to move ahead now, we need to know which hybrid model we would use, or none, because we could say we don't need a hybrid model in Urbandale, and that's fine. I told you the reasons why we proposed having one. And then I know that we need some decisions around calendar, professional development, that movement of that day in our calendar, around approval to go ahead and start Rolling Green on July 23rd. And then Steve has several items after that. But as far as this particular item, I'm going to go to my board agenda. Letter A, return to learn plan updates. We really are just wanting to share with you the stuff that we know right now and the work that we've been doing. And then after that, so I'm going to have each committee leader share about their section of the return to learn plan category that they've worked in. And then I think that it would be good for our committees to hear the board have just a conversation about all of those pieces of the return to school guidance that we think are missing, because I feel like we've got committees or teams that are probably going to have to get to work now, filling in the gaps that we did not get in that guidance that we were expecting. And so when we do that, we want to be able to do it in alignment with what board members are thinking about. That's not to put the board on the spot. That's so that when we get to July 13th, we're able to say, here's what we're planning for, and so board, we think this aligns to kind of what you were thinking to the best that we could. Now, if the department comes out with new guidance that contradicts what we come up with, then we'll have to pivot. But I think we're in a position where we can't wait on them any longer, because we've already waited, in my opinion, we've waited too long for them to tell us these things, and then they didn't. And I do not mean to sound so much like a bashing department about it. It simply was not the guidance, the clarity that we thought we were going to get. So with that, I would like for us to do the return to learn plan overviews, not lengthy from each committee member. In fact, for the two that I am speaking to, I really just want to emphasize the biggies are in this document already. So for the leadership team, really, there isn't anything that we're doing that is specific to on-site or specific to hybrid or specific to required continuous learning. All of this work that has occurred so far has happened in thinking about all three delivery models together. So when we think about like the purpose of the return to learn plan and the outcomes that you see there, that's thinking across all three delivery models. When we write about the continuous improvement model that we'll use, that's just lining ourselves up with our cadence of accountability and data use that we already do on monthly basis, quarterly basis, and to begin with these plans on a weekly basis. The district leadership team will continue meeting at least once a week, but I have a feeling it'll be multiple times a week to adjust, because we know that whatever we put in place for day one, there's going to need to be adjustments made. What seems like a good idea now, or what seems like it would work on paper, might not actually work when we get in person. So being able to make those adjustments quickly and be responsive will be important. And then in infrastructure, you can see that a big piece of infrastructure is around our surveys, checking in on what it is that we need, or that people need from us. So we have implemented staff and family surveys. A student survey for grades 6 through 12 was sent out, I think it was sometime today, by the middle school and high school. And so that's been a big piece, and we've been divvying out and figuring out who's going to handle what portions of those surveys. So for example, this weekend, Carrie went through the surveys, through the staff survey, and helped us identify staff that maybe need a check-in right now, and made sure that their leader, so whoever their supervisor is, has their name and knows that they probably want to check in with that employee here over the next week or so and see if they need some assistance or help with anything. So we've been divvying all of that out as part of this infrastructure plan. We also, so another big piece of the infrastructure plan has to do with calendars. And so this is what you're seeing tonight. There is a recommendation to move a professional development day from April to the beginning of the year for both Rolling Green and the traditional calendar, in order to give teachers an extra day of professional learning time, given how much needs to be shared, learned, planned for, created, all of that. That actually came from the Iowa Academic Standards team. They made that recommendation to the district leadership team via the infrastructure plan. And then the other thing was that we determined that we support starting Rolling Green on July 23rd still. And so you'll see that recommendation in the board packet tonight also. So then here you can see that through the infrastructure plan, we have been exploring the viability of various hybrid models. We started with surveying UCSD staff about a whole list of them. The staff kind of narrowed that down to 2 ideas, and then we left a spot at the end for them to suggest an idea that they didn't see that might be more helpful. And so out of that information, we gathered the idea about spreading pre-K through 6th grade out across all the elementaries, middle school, and high school. And we felt like that was both doable, and it answered some of the questions and frustrations people were expressing to us around childcare. And so we did, as part of our more comprehensive staff survey a couple of weeks ago, then we introduced that idea and asked for support either way on those 2 models. There are definitely pros and cons both, We asked staff members just to answer for themselves which one they think is the most viable for us to do. And so you have those results for later on. We've also asked families about that. So then over here, we also have been working on, there's kind of this separate required continuous learning plan. Whoops, I clicked on it and I did not mean to. That the department put out to help us answer some of those questions. Sorry. To help us answer some of those questions that I was showing you that are in CASA about required continuous learning. And so that's the other piece that that team has been working on. So I'm going to do a handoff to Lauren to do a little bit of sharing about the health and safety plan. Lauren, do you want to share your screen? Or do you want me to click on something, or do you want me not to share screen at all?
You can just leave it right where it is, Denise, on that spot, and I'll just add to that a little bit. You can see there that the three main areas of health and safety, and before I start, just to follow up on what Denise said regarding the guidance from the DE, we as a team, we're certainly more hopeful in regards to more specific guidance regarding some of the really big ticket items in terms of workplace and learner safety. And that makes this evening and really every day from here on out really important as we get ready to bring kids and teachers and staff back to school. But just looking at the big areas of the work of our team, you can see there it says ensuring ongoing workplace safety, supporting mitigation strategies overall, and then monitoring the health and safety of our teachers, staff, students, and families. Those are the big areas that we are focused on. In regards to that, some of the details that we have worked on are certainly the services we offer with our nurses. And they have done a lot of very detailed work to connect to this plan. And there's still more work to go as we really look at a changing environment. It's amazing to me that just in watching over the last 2 to 3 weeks, the changes that we've seen happen, and it's what makes the discussion tonight, I think, very timely, especially as it relates to face coverings, which I'll get to in a little bit. We've also talked a lot about cleaning processes and what our custodial staff will need to do to make sure or ensure that we have the cleanest facilities possible for our kids and have the healthiest facilities possible for our kids and adults. We have also talked about PPE needs, and there are going to be more needs for some than others in certain areas, and trying to be in tune with what those needs are and to make sure we have in place what we need to when we get started. One of the big areas that we've had a lot of discussion with our team about, and maybe the board will weigh in a little bit on too, is social distancing in general. One of the things that is very difficult for all of us to comprehend is how can we social distance with our kids, bringing them all back. For any of you that have been in our buildings, you know that while we have fantastic facilities, our kids are really close to one another on a normal day when things were normal. So we have to, one of the things that we're looking at are how can we reduce loads on common areas. Certainly the lunchroom is a big one, hallways, and even to some extent classrooms, some of our smaller classrooms, maybe not as huge of an issue in our bigger rooms, but we have a lot of variety in the size of our rooms. Just increasing general space around among students during class and during in-person instruction. One that's a little easier is just limiting the use of our buildings to outside entities and being in tune with that. And then potentially addressing points of access and entrances and kids leaving and adults coming and going. There's a lot of details that are within that. For instance, what do you do with hallways? Can we alter passing times? Can we change any structures to scheduling? Things like that. And those are going to be key discussions that all of our building leaders continue to have as they develop their schedules for the upcoming school year. One of the things that we're happy about right now is that we have been able to collaborate with Polk County Health already. both in doing some planning and also on contact tracing, even now with activities happening. And if any of you have seen the news, you can see that the health departments have become busier in guiding schools and teams in terms of what a close contact is and what they're recommending for teams to do if they have primary contact to COVID or if it's secondary. Another thing that we've been weighing a lot, and where honestly we've been trying to sift through some conflicting recommendations, is around face coverings and what to do about that to maintain the safety of not only our kids but our staff as well. And that is one of the things, in Denise mentioning that earlier, that I think our board's thoughts and considerations of that will be very important as we consider. It's one of the things that the DE came out with some strong wording, and at least in speaking for our team, I think the recommendation was maybe surprising a little bit to us in terms of where they were coming from. So that one is a big area, and we certainly have a lot of work to do over the next few weeks as a team to take our most current, but also to start moving forward because we need to, based on the timeliness of when school is starting. So that is our report for right now. I don't know if you all want to wait until you hear the other reports or if that's an area that you want to talk about right now, but that's what I have to add.
I would personally like to talk about it now so that we can keep everything per topic if possible. I don't know how the rest of the board feels.
Fine, go ahead.
So I think we should have the discussion about the masks sooner rather than later. I don't know if now is appropriate or not. I know how I feel about them personally. I would like to see that we require them, obviously making, Judy, what's the word I want?
Exceptions?
Thank you. For folks that either can't wear them, or especially for the younger kids, if we could look at face masks, like the clear ones.
The shields
for our teachers. I think that it can help with especially learning languages, learning how to read, learning how to, for our English language learners, I think that'll be helpful. I know there's a number of different resources out there of how to make the face shields work to keep, because like there are some where like the sides are open, the bottoms are open, but there's ways to close those things down to keep kind of everything contained. And there's a bunch of different looks to everything. I know there's even masks that have like a clear spot over the mouth so you can still see. I personally would be very supportive of us requiring masks.
I agree, and the only thing I would add is that I think we as a district have the opportunity to provide masks or face shields for everyone who needs them. And, I think our teachers, it's going to be hard, but I think that it's a life lesson that unfortunately our students need to have right now. I know my 4-year-old is getting used to it and would appreciate being able to take it off at recess and at lunch, but adapt. And so I think whatever resources we as a school, if we do go down that path, I would support mandatory face coverings and whatever we could do to make sure that everyone has what they need. And then of course, work backwards for exceptions. And if we as a district have established that it's untenable, we can make that decision, but starting with that high expectation would be my preference.
Judy, or board, this is Sarah as well, and I absolutely agree with what both Ashley and Judy said. I think starting at mandatory and then working our way backwards, making exceptions if we have to, and kind of figuring out that process as we move along.
So is
I
it
couldn't agree
appropriate?
more. Also, I have a question. What is the opt-out process going to, and if this is better placed, my question at a different time, let me know. But what is the opt-out process going to look like for parents that, for whatever reason, don't feel safe having their child present in person at the start of the school year? But again, if that's best said in another portion of the meeting, totally fine.
I think
So
I don't know.
Stacy, I can tell you, we don't know exactly. We are just, right now, we wanted to do a double check with the board to be sure that we were on the right track with that thinking.
Okay.
That since now that we know we can provide that, that we would like to, but we wanted to check that thinking, and then details will need to be worked out. Probably there will be some sort of a time commitment from families that choose that, because what we will have to do then is match teachers up to the students that need to be online with teachers that will be teaching online. And then that also lets us know how large class sizes would be. And so there would likely need to be some sort of a length of time commitment for that. But it will probably, we don't have a ton of details around that. And Carrie, I know that you have had a little bit of a vision about this. Am I articulating it at all?
I think you are. We certainly didn't want to offer that and then find out that that was not something that the board supported. And so that's really about what tonight is about, is to make sure that the things that we are thinking, you also are thinking, and that we can be a unified front. So once we know that, yep, that's what we would like to offer for families, then we will certainly put that out as a process. And Denise is right that because we will need to be assigning staff to that work, that will need to be a long-term commitment. I don't know if that's a semester or if that's for the full year, but it's not something that we can have families move in and out of smoothly. So it does need to be a commitment, but that would be open to any family that chose that it wouldn't have to, if that's what we decided, it would not have to be dependent upon a health need.
Okay,
I support
thank you
that
for
option.
answering my question. Yeah, I do as well. And also with regards to comments made with regard to masking, I support being really conservative and masking and making exceptions as needed. I think it's a way of teaching our children good citizenship in different times. So anyways, I just want to say thank you for all the hard work you do, and I do support masking.
The other thing
this
we'll
is
want
Sarah.
to be aware about is that for a family to be able to make a good decision about that, they'll want to know what our safety precautions are. So whether we're requiring masks, whether we're not requiring masks, will impact the decision that those families make. And so that really has to come first, and then the offer comes second.
Carrie, this is Sarah. I have another question about if you guys are conversing at all about distance in turn, like, how with our already overcrowded elementaries, especially, how we would look at spreading kids out or keeping a more appropriate distance in place, or do we need the opt-out families to come forward first before we can look at even if we have space to do that? And then also, like, I feel like we're on a time crunch because of Rolling Green.
Yes.
So where are we at?
Yep, absolutely. So all of that plays a role. If a significant number of students do choose to stay home for their education, then obviously that opens up classroom space for more social distancing. Other things that have been discussed is that if, for instance, lunch would be served in classrooms versus bringing 200 or 300 students to the cafeteria, that cafeteria space could potentially be used for classroom, for some of those classrooms right now that we have that are oversized. So yes, all of that plays into one another in terms of making sure that that our classrooms aren't crowded.
I want to know if we need to take a vote on these tonight, or if you just want to hear our opinions. Because if we have to take a vote on them, I'd like us to stay per topic, just so we can make sure we get all that covered. I don't know what
You will
the,
not. No, you're not. We are not planning to bring forward a motion or a recommendation or anything around face coverings tonight. I think, Lauren, is it safe to say that for July 13th, based on tonight's conversations, your team will have some kind of stronger recommendations? And I don't know if it's stuff that will get board approved as much as informing the board based on our conversation. This is what, I don't know exactly what needs approval and what doesn't,
Right.
but I think that it'll be July 13th, Lauren. And I think along with that, if the state hasn't given us any guiding guides for decision making, is that kind of the time too that we would say, this is what we're thinking for how we'll decide to
Yes. Yeah,
change
that's
the-
exactly what I was thinking. And I would agree. I don't know that it's going to require, some of those things are going to require a vote, but just hearing your thoughts, like for instance, on that topic is very beneficial to the work of our team. And as Carrie said, puts us on the, in a bigger group together in terms of how we want to move forward. So I would agree with Denise that the next board meeting would be where we would take either recommendations if necessary, or at least a consensus of what our plan is in terms of recommendations for our buildings and their health and safety.
will we have enough time between that board date and it, like say we were to agree to open Rolling Green on their normal schedule, is there enough time for parents and families to implement that given that board date? Or should we, I'm worried about time for them more than anything else, is trying to make sure we can pull this off for the one school that's going to open before everyone else.
That's why I would say I think more of it's going to be reporting to the board than it probably will be asking for action, at least in regards to some of the tactics and actions that we would take regarding health and safety. That's where this discussion tonight is so beneficial. It would be more reporting in regards to this topic than it would be probably getting votes done.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And with that in mind, I will comment that I also think it's really important that we offer parents who either can't or don't want to return online option, if only because if they choose to leave our district to homeschool, that could cause a whole bunch of other issues. So I'd rather we just try to work around it as best we can.
The other piece in thinking about the Rolling Green calendar is, and I could be surprised, but my best estimate is that if there were families that chose to engage in online, they probably would join a traditional calendar group just in terms of student to teacher ratio versus being able to kind of man their own group. So they would be able to be folded into that, even though it would be a shorter notice before their start date.
Okay, so to move forward, what I'm hearing, to summarize, the majority of the board would at this point advocate for mandatory face coverings of some type, depending on developmental stages. And a question that I have is if there's any vision for when this will actually be publicized to our publics, all of these decisions moving forward. I mean, will we be developing pages on the website for guidance?
Yes.
And when will that happen?
Sorry, this is Krista.
Yep.
Yes, Dina and I have already talked so we are required to publish our CASA submission on our website. So Dina's already working to create, in fact, I think she's already created the page where all of this information will live. So, I imagine, Lauren, as soon as your team convenes and takes under consideration the guidance that you've heard or the direction that you've heard tonight, they'll be in a position to make a decision, and that would be then, published on our website. I think what we would want to know is, is the board wanting to see those things before they go out? And if so, then, if it's prior to July 13th, we'd need, of course, a way to get that information to you. If you're comfortable based on what you hear tonight of us just publishing as those things move forward, then we can do that too.
Personally, I'm comfortable with getting things out, and if it's true to the essence of our discussion, which I know it will be. But I would also say, just personally as a board member, that I will commit to be extra responsive and have extra meetings if needed over the next few weeks, because you were all working in a crunch because of pressures that are at the state level, and we wanted to do the best. So if there's something that we need to do, an extra meeting or whatever, I think a lot of us would be willing to do whatever you need.
I would second that. I think if what's needed is us to be very present, I think a number of us are down for that.
I would tend to agree. I think we need to stay informed. Kind of going off of what you're saying, Krista, is, we need that avenue of information coming to us still. And so if it does take a couple extra meetings or at least open avenues of emails, then that's what it'll take. But I think us all being on the same page and providing direction is pretty key right now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. This is
Sarah?
communication flowing, but I am obviously I want us to get back to learning as soon as possible, but my biggest concern is how we have our building set up right now and the number of students. If we don't have people opt out, like how quickly we can have a plan in place for what we do, especially at the elementary level where we have doubled up classes.
Is that the big unknown right now, is what the opt-out process even looks like for us? I mean, is that what we're building to initially, if that's the viable solution?
So the only information we have right now is in the parent survey, which we were going to get to when we get to that hybrid model discussion. We did ask parents, do you plan on sending your child back to school in the fall? And we did have, I think, 83 people who said no. At this point, I don't feel comfortable doing that. We had over 300, and I'd have to look at my notebook here to get the exact number, but it's in the packet, say that they're not sure at this time. And then we had 3 different, variations of yes on that question. So yeah, I think when we get to that hybrid discussion, that's definitely some data we can go over. I think though, to Sarah's point, like really that's kind of what the hybrid model discussion is about, is we know that our buildings are pretty crunched with Olmsted being under construction this year, and with the middle school and high school are always pretty full, just being big secondary schools. And so we've erred on, we want to have a hybrid model, at least on paper, so that if we really get to a point where we are left kind of to make those decisions on our own, we are able to do that. So I think that this might come up in the hybrid discussion.
Okay.
I did pull that data up if you all just want to kind of get the sense of where families are right now on that. Sure. 38.9% say I want my kid back in school no matter what. 22% say yes, but only if everyone wears a mask. 14% yes, but they don't support the wearing of masks for children. Like Krista said, that number is 83, so a little under 5% have said no. But we still have 20.5% who are saying that they aren't sure. So we feel like that's still a pretty big variable, especially when we throw in the mask situation.
And those are survey responses. Those are not number of children. So we figured loosely based on how people responded, what grade their children are in, that we have just over 3,000 students represented, that these data right here are survey respondents. So 1,810 respondents representing 3,008 children.
Okay. I don't know. Is there a way to, this is Sarah. I guess, get a feeling for how
Is Sarah cutting out for anybody else? I'm not.
Yeah.
how we
She's
staff
cutting out for me.
classrooms if
Hey, Sarah,
teachers
you're
aren't
cutting out on
available
us.
also. Do we think we're gonna have a challenge this year getting, I mean, you always have a challenge, but greater than ever?
Sarah, you were cutting out. Do you mind repeating that question for us, please?
Yeah, this isn't directly related to the surveys, but I'm curious, is there a way to get a feel for how many subs we're going to have, like, that we've had in the past willing to come back into the building? I am thinking that this could be the worst year ever, that if you're going to work somewhere that maybe a school wouldn't be the most, you know, it wouldn't be the first place people go to.
We don't have any specific data yet, Sarah, but I totally agree with you. It is a major concern in terms of having enough adults to work with kids, not only for that reason, but also potentially for just the childcare issues that could come up in a hybrid model, as well as the potential of positive cases, which will lead to longer illness outages than we've ever had before. So I think for multiple reasons, that is a serious concern.
I will say, Sarah, this is Krista. I will say, you know, from a professional development standpoint, those are subs we can control. And we've already said, you know, essentially curriculum work, we're not doing that during the school day. We're not doing, you know, we're not doing day-to-days during the school day. We're going to figure out ways to do those things virtually or, you know, in smaller chunks of time. So we're really, really looking at what we can control in terms of professional learning that might put a strain on our subsystem. Another plug, I should say, or another reason why the Iowa Academic Standards team thought that moving that in-service day to a pre-service might be helpful to, again, cut down on time when in the past we would have pulled teachers from classrooms.
In relation to that topic, do we have a sense of how many of our teachers are health-wise able to return if we do full classrooms? Because the latest thing that came out from the CDC added a couple different things that put people at risk, and that covers like 40% of the population. So I'm assuming there's some overlap with our teachers. And there's also the issue with pregnancy and how that could potentially affect that whole deal. So I was wondering if we had a number on what we can expect of our teachers to come back to even just a baseline.
That is a really, really difficult question to answer right now. I think for a couple of reasons. One, everybody that is weighing their own health concerns, I'm sure, has a different level of concern regarding whether it's a safe place to come back to or not. In other words, two people might have a very similar health condition. One's going to be willing to come back. The other may not be. The other thing is, I think everybody will weigh to what extent will they want to use their different leaves, their own personal leaves, or potentially leave that is also with the CARES Act or is afforded them through the CARES Act. It just means that it's a really complex decision-making process that I think a lot of our staff members are probably going through right now as they weigh whether to pursue documentation that would allow for them to not come to back to work.
Have we gotten any sort of feel from anyone that are like?
I think we have more general concerns right now than we do specific in regards to those health conditions. I think over the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, and certainly in regards to Rolling Green, if it goes off on July 23, we're going to learn a lot more about that specifically as people make those decisions.
I'm sorry. I know it's like a way far out left field question.
No, it's a
I
good
assume
question.
we probably don't have the info yet, but I was just.
There's no bad questions right now, and not a lot of good answers.
That's fair.
All right. If you want, I can go ahead and continue just with a real brief overview of this because I know we have more to get to. So this is Krista Carlisle again, and I've been working with the team on the Iowa Academic Standards Plan. Denise, if you don't mind just scrolling, I can, again, at a real high level, just share that the 3 main areas of focus for the Iowa Academic Standards, as Denise mentioned earlier, whatever delivery model we're in, we're expected to maintain the rigor and alignment to the core. And so really assessing initial student learning needs is priority number 1. Then matching those curriculum to those learning needs that are identified and accelerating learning using effective instruction to match the student learning needs. So what we've been doing is going through consideration by consideration from the Department of Ed support document to generate what do we need to do, what do we need to accomplish in order to do these 3 things. And so it's a mix of taking some established processes and modifying them perhaps, and then some new learning for teachers, some new professional learning for teachers. So once those teams, we've got smaller work teams now, we've folded in, I think 33 teachers now are on our different work teams, and we're going through all of those to-dos that we generated. The next step after that, most of them are due July 15th, again, being cognizant of rolling green. So the next step after that is to design a coherent and cohesive plan to deploy these things to our teachers, whether that be professional learning, making sure our schedules are in place to allow for PLC and collaboration time, and all of those different things. We are also, the state has released some learning modules. They partnered with Unbound Ed to release some modules around these 3 topics. And so making those available to our teachers, figuring out where those fit is what we're doing at the moment. I will turn it over to Shauna and Carrie to talk through the social emotional behavior health plan overview, if there are no questions from the board.
I guess my question is, I like the idea that we should have a standard and a goal of trying to match the academic rigor with remote learning. I think that's a great goal, but I think that from my perspective, it's not, and this is not to challenge the competency of our educators, but this is not it's not going to happen, right? Like, is that just me that maybe we need to have some grace and some understanding with what can actually happen remotely?
For sure. One of the things that we started, the week after spring break, when it became apparent that we were out of school, well, we knew we were out of school for 4 weeks, but we were still kind of planning, thinking ahead. We're going back in April. We were very optimistic at that point. We convened PLC teams to identify the prioritized standards for the rest of the year. So we know, there are a laundry list of standards to be covered, and the process of prioritizing really just means how do those standards build to get to something that's of higher level. So really it was identifying those higher level things and trying to figure out what extra could be cut. How do we really maintain that laser-like focus on those prioritized standards? When it became apparent that we weren't going back, now what we have, and this exists for K-8, we're working on it in 9-12 just because those classes aren't quite as linear. But now what we have is a process by which we can sort of pass the torch to the next teacher, not for the purpose of spending the first 6 weeks or month of school reviewing, but more for the purpose of saying, what is the prioritized standard in my grade level, 4th grade, let's say? What was the missed prioritized standard in 3rd grade? Oh, well, how can I, when that comes up in my unit of instruction, maybe that's not until October, for example, what sort of extra scaffolding do I need to provide for kids? Is there a quick couple of mini lessons that we could provide on this or that or whatever? And it varies by standard and by subject area. But that's essentially what that means, that whole scaffolding or accelerating student learning using effective instruction matched to their learning needs. That's essentially what we're trying to accomplish with that process. And it's super complex, for sure.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep.
I would like to say that I looked through a lot of your the modules and the things that you've been doing. It was an incredible amount of work, and I really appreciate it. I think that it's going to be good going forward, no matter what our delivery system is. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Teamwork makes dream work, right?
Woo!
You just pumped me up, Catherine. My turn to talk, so. Anybody else want to say anything nice? Shauna and Carrie, you want to go over the social emotional behavioral? Yep. I'll go ahead and start, and then Carrie can add anything, and then I would love for any team members to jump on and add anything if I miss anything. So, you know, Denise already kind of touched on, you know, talking about how we sent out a survey to our staff members and our family members, and she touched on it in the infrastructure plan. So essentially, you know, we surveyed our staff members and our family members, and essentially when we asked them if they needed any help with essentially their social emotional needs. And if they said that they did, we had, for our staff, we had our either our principals or our department leads are reaching out to them to make sure, and that's across the whole entire district. So everybody that started this week, so they will be directly contacted. So that I think is phenomenal. And then as the family survey, as that went out, if they then said, yes, you know, I'm concerned about my students' social emotional, you know, mental health right now, then our FFOs or Michelle Hamilton, they're contacting them directly. So that has been amazing. So you can see, I know Krista scrolled up. So we also are providing, we've reached out to all of our staff members, and it just as a nice reminder through all of this, just because, you know, some of us have been locked in our houses with our family members since March, and that's been a little trying for us. And, you know, just life has been unexpected. You know, a lot of us has just been going through stuff. So we just wanted to remind our family members that, you know, of EFR, and we have awesome insurance here at Urbandale. You know, we have, you can go to counseling without a copay. And we just wanted to remind our staff members of that is a gift that not all districts have. And so we wanted to also remind them that there's different webinars going on, and we've also put together a COVID-19 resource guide that is housed on our website that you can find and anybody can access, and it's housed in our student service section on our website. So we've been working on that, and then we're trying to figure out how we're going to put together some professional development for all of our staff members. Denise also spoke about this, about hopefully instead of having the 3 professional development days, we'll have the 4. And then did someone say something? No, I'm just hearing my voice. Okay. I thought someone was Catherine, you were gonna give me another positive, and no, oh, shucks.
Yeah, consider it done.
Okay, yes. So we're talking about just what professional development for social emotional well-being that we can give to all staff members at the, you know, very beginning of the school year. And then how we're also looking into the AA toolkit and how we can then prolong that throughout the year with the teaching and learning for all students and staff. So we're just really excited we have a great committee, and we love learning from everybody. We all look through different lenses because we're spread throughout the whole entire district. So it's awesome. So Carrie, I don't know if you want to add anything, but I'd really encourage anybody from our committee to speak up or add anything that I've forgotten. If anybody has any questions, I'm not going to answer them. You can ask them to someone else. Anyone?
I think you did a good job, Shauna. Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well then I'm next in special ed too. So if there are really truly no questions, then I'll just keep going because I know it's getting kind of late. So then we jump into the special ed. We jump into equity, and then it's broken out into different sections. So the special ed section of it, we've been brainstorming and just discussing all different, you know, how we could go from the on-site, the hybrid, and the required continuous learning, and what that will look like for all of our students. What's really exciting about this, and will be, you know, extremely challenging in itself, will be that every student that has an IEP will need also a remote learning plan. So that means that we'll have to have an IEP for each student, and that's over 400 students. So our special ed teachers will be extremely busy come fall. So essentially every student will need their own individual plan on what the hybrid plan will look like, even after we say this is what hybrid will look like for UCSD. That could be tweaked for all of our students in special ed. So we just really need to establish what the accommodations, modifications, how that will look individualized for each student. So this part is going to be extremely trying and challenging for the special ed department. And that's why the hybrid piece is, it's just really important. I would say to our department, to me, and to the whole department, and to this committee, that tonight we would come together, and I mean partner together, to come together to figure out which hybrid we're going to determine, because we have a lot of work to come around to figure out what it's going to look like for all of our students with special ed needs. So also we have, you know, I've talked a lot and worked a lot alongside of Lauren, and we have a lot of our own PPE needs that we need to order for just the safety of staff. So we'll be ordering our own information.
I don't know what I have. What beer do we have?
Our own.
I have Yingling.
Yingling, mango wheat.
Hey, Michelle.
Corona seltzer.
Is that Michelle? There you go. Okay. Yeah. So are there, sorry, I got really distracted there for a second. Are there any questions around special ed that I could answer?
I might be jumping ahead a little bit, but in terms of the hybrid models, if there is a need to break out from that model and provide individualized, either in-person or remote learning for our special needs students, we will be able to do that. Is that correct?
So, so I can just be, so say our hybrid model, depending on, so if we did AB, or let's just go with our AB. Say our students with intellectual disabilities or our students with higher academic needs, potentially when we would sit in an IEP meeting, some of those, it's harder for them to learn, obviously remote or, you know, obviously online. So they potentially could come every single day. So that is where it's going to really hone in and be an individualized decision, because when we're thinking about, we have to deliver a free appropriate public education for that student, and we have to make sure that, you know, it's not voluntary anymore, it's all required, and we have to make sure that, you know, we're providing a core instruction for them, and then their specially designed instruction. We have to make sure that we're doing that for them as well as other students. And, you know, when I think of, you know, my child who has a reading goal on her IEP, but she can get her instruction off the computer. And then I think of other students that we have here that absolutely cannot sit and get instruction off the computer. We're absolutely charged with that, and we then need to provide their instruction. So that's where it absolutely comes down to a meeting, an IEP meeting. And so we have to have, you know, every student has an IEP meeting, an annual IEP meeting, no matter what, but we will have to have an IEP meeting at the beginning of the year for 400 plus students here at UCSD to make sure that they have this remote learning plan embedded into their IEP. So then we can do, if everybody comes to school, but then we have this outbreak and we would have to go to hybrid, we could then put an amendment in and then start them if we needed to. So it's a lot of work for special ed. It's a lot of work for everybody, but it's just this extra layer of work.
I think that's helpful to hear, because I think as board members, when we hear a lot of different options of remote learning or certain age groups doing something, our first concern is who's falling through the cracks in that system. But to know that our system can accommodate that and still provide that, you know, different setting for students who we will work for, I think is going to really help us make the decision. I appreciate that. And then I would ask, like, I think I guess for all of our leadership in all the different areas, to continue to, if there are resources that you need, or, you know, something like moving one professional development day, I know is a really big deal, but from our perspective, I think, I can't speak for everyone on the board, but that's like, yeah, definitely no brainer, whatever you guys need to do. So I would just say, like, as this is kind of being implemented, if there are resources that we could affect it all, or we could help with, just let us know, I guess.
Thank you. Are there any other questions about special ed that the committee, that you have questions for, like special ed teachers or?
I had a quick question. So if we were to go with hybrid option 1, which is the kindergarten or pre-K through 6 is in school and 7 through 12 is at home, would that, because it figures out the buildings to be at 50%, that would also give us the ability for these kids to come in at the high school level and still get, I just want to make sure that that's an option, correct?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay. So that's, we have, no matter what, we still have to provide we're still charged with all the same federal laws. So we have to be able to do that. So the vision is to still provide our students with intellectual disabilities, like in our level 3 programming, to still come in every day. And then our students with moderate academic needs will need to look at, but most likely they will be coming in. Mm-hmm. And then we, our special ed team, we are forming a larger team as of right now. We just sent out the email on Friday to get volunteers for, it'll be consistent of associates, special ed teachers, coaches, interventionists, and parents to see, I think I got everybody, to help form, to help us create better ideas, and just to make sure that we're not missing any ideas, and getting just from through all the lenses, you know, because right now I look through an administrator lens, and I need, you know, our coaches look, you know, our gen ed coaches look through their lens, and associates look through their lens. We need parents to see through their lens. And so we just want all the ideas. So
honestly, Shauna, you are killing it. Thank you.
Thanks.
No, I appreciate when you can answer my question and give me enough information that I feel really, really secure. So I just want to say thank you.
That's really nice, but I have to be really honest. It's not me. It's the team that I work with, and I couldn't do it without this team that, you know, the administrative team in this office, but also the special ed team. I've got 2 great coaches, you know, that I work with, you know, Sarah Claver and Amy Eshelman, and they keep my toes to the fire, and they're always working with me. So I'm pretty blessed. So thank you.
You guys are killing it. Thank you. Thank you.
So I don't know if my question's for Shauna or maybe for Carrie or maybe both. It's a little bit special ed. It's a little bit going back to SCBMH. What has been considered, or what have you thought about as far as really looking, I think, especially that first semester, and especially if we're back face-to-face learning, as far as professional development and or more coaching with looking at intervention services and really being proactive. You know, I'm concerned about 400 students on IEPs right now. Then we add kids that haven't been in school for a really long time, and we have lots of different factors that come into play with even looking back at, you know, what did students miss, you know, our differentiation as well, you know. And so I have a big concern about maybe over identifying or identifying students too soon, and making sure that we're really working through our MTSS system of supports for whether students are face-to-face, I guess, or even online as well. So I'm not sure what, I guess my question is, what thoughts have teams had around that idea?
And I would actually probably pull Krista into that conversation. I think that a lot of that conversation has fallen to the Iowa Academic Standards group. The focus that we have done with SEBH has been more around the non-academic concerns for students. So things about how might our routine change? What kinds of, how do we couch the words that we use? So being really thoughtful about the words that we're using when we talk about the changes that are taking place. And how do we help teachers take the things that they might naturally do in an on-site situation and be able to move that to an online situation. So Krista, am I correct that you would like to hop on?
Okay. Sure can. So what you're talking about, Bree, is actually addressed in a couple of different places in the Iowa Academic Standards Plan. So we recognize the need for what we're calling as an initial PLC process. We have data now that we've never, through EduClimber and our data warehousing tool, that we've put together a initial professional learning community process where people would go through the data that they have. MAP assessments are going to be another piece of data that we collect very early on in the year. And I've attended a meeting with the MAP individuals. Their statisticians have done some projecting based on what they know from spring to fall loss, what the winter to fall loss is likely to be in terms of kids and what their impact on their learning. Since we've done that correlation with MAP scores to Iowa Assessment of Student Progress, ISAS, we know that that's a good predictor for us. So that's our initial PLC process. Now, ongoing, what we want to do is add in the layer of looking at not only a student's level of achievement, but their trend, and then comparative data. You know, we all know, for example, that when grades start to suffer or there's an anomaly in data, that oftentimes that means something else is going on with kids. So to your point, we don't want to over-identify, but we also don't want to miss kids. So those are part of the protocols and processes that are going to, that are being developed right now that just fit into our PLC process. We also took a couple of schools, I think we have 3 schools now that have gone through the SAMI process. So those schools are in a great place to shore up their, in particular, level 2 and, or excuse me, tier 2 and 3 systems. So we're working with that process too.
Thank you.
You bet.
Does that answer everything, Bree?
Yeah, I think so. I really, want to make sure that we're very mindful of this, and I'm happy to hear that some of the buildings are going through the SAMI process. I do think I would love to see every building going through that, because I think it's just continuous improvement. And I think it will also help with our MTSS systems. Sorry, in places that might really need that support. And I am just concerned, I think, especially when it comes to behaviors. And I know you mentioned, reteaching routines and things like that. Well, there's going to be a lot of new routines as well. So it's not just going to be reteaching, it's going to be looking at all the new routines and things. And lots of behaviors can happen just because lots of situations. So I think that's just an ongoing learning, whether it happens, right away in August, but, continue to think about that as your teams work together and think, about what does each student need, not over identifying, but making sure that we're differentiating and giving the students, what they need, but being very conscientious about that, that EER process and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, all of us would say that we want to continue to grow in our MTSS process. And I think that we took the right steps this year. And, we could all raise our hands that we want to continue to grow. And that's us being vulnerable and saying, we would be silly to say that we don't want to continue to grow in that, So, and one thing that I didn't add is that, in our SE, our social emotional behavior mental health is, Kari Miller is on our team. and we're, you know, she's the lead, you know, one of the leads at AA. So she gave us the idea of the building the strong brains. And so she said that she would be able to lead us in some of that professional development. And so she was able to get back to me today and lead us through the different modules on that. And because that looks really interesting. And so she said it just takes a half day. So we're thinking about, that's one of the things that we're looking into at with our committee. So we're really excited about that.
Great. And I would highly recommend Growing Strong Brains for all, because it's very, very good.
And then she also gave us this book. I don't know if you've looked into this, the DBT Skills in Schools. They're also looking at that. And so we're looking into that too for some of our upper elementary, middle school teachers. So.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I need to know, well, we all need to know what has to be decided tonight and what can be let go, because we're running on 2 hours here. So I assume there needs to be some direction on the B, and I assume Rolling Green decisions must be decided tonight. Is that accurate?
We also need or that's probably a 1. A1 hybrid delivery model. And then the calendar changes, Rolling Green. So does the board want us to stop here? What we have left is English learners.
I just need to know what you need from us before the night's over.
Yep. So I can speak to, I know that we need this number 1, hybrid delivery model options and recommendation.
You mean
calendar
AI or A1?
Yeah,
I guess.
I wasn't
Whatever.
sure which one it is.
Yeah.
And then B, everything under C.
Mm-hmm.
And then Steve, that's as far as I know, I think.
I would say then G and I are the 2 others that are important to do now.
And I think probably the personnel report. Just guessing.
Okay. So I'm thrilled to know a lot of this stuff that is going on. It's really awesome. But we probably need to move a little faster, or we're going to be here till midnight. So maybe we could go into the hybrid delivery model, maybe talk about some of the pros and cons. And maybe, you know, how you guys are feeling about some of it. And then hopefully we'll be able to reach some decisions on B, C, and G and I. Anyone?
Do you want me to start the hybrid conversation? I don't know who's...
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. I will continue to screen share then so that we're all looking at the same things.
Well, I guess, is there any information that has not been put in the packet? Is there information outside of that to share?
Yeah, Stacy, this is Krista. There's not. I did email the board earlier this afternoon and put in the updated parent survey data from today. It was pulled this morning and the survey closed last night. I mean, really what I can say about it is it's pretty statistically insignificant when you look at the head-to-head between the two from the perspective of parents. I did in the email just include a little bit of information about survey methodology that, you know, really the response rate we got of approximately 75% of our students recommended is really, really, really high. It's considered excellent by statistical standards. So, you know, but no, there's, other than the staff survey data, the parent survey data, and then the pros and cons, that's really all the information there is. We were hopeful that, again, like many people, that guidance that came out last week would maybe help direct us toward one over another, but it didn't, unfortunately. I think what's helpful for me, maybe one piece of information that might be helpful, you know, whatever we're talking about, we're not talking about well, we hope we're not talking about a long-term solution. When the conversation about around hybrid models started, and I met with my counterparts in other districts around the metro, actually every district around the metro, like we were all thinking at that time, well, this will have to be a semester, or this will have to be, a certain length of time. I think what we're realizing now is hopefully we can be much more short-term in some of these decisions versus long-term, because our goal is always face-to-face with kids if it's safe to do so. So that might help our thinking a little bit. I don't know if it does, but it certainly helped me to think that these are more short-term solutions, weeks versus months.
Definitely. And I appreciate all your hard work. It's clear that so much hard work has been done. So thank you so much. But yeah, based on what I've seen and all the data, if there's nothing else to share, I mean, if there was certainly new information, but I feel prepared to vote based on the information put forward. I don't know if I'm the only one that feels that way.
I wouldn't mind us having a little bit of a conversation beforehand.
Yeah, I really appreciate all the information and kind of the added perspective that you guys have provided. I think I've got a sense of where I feel about the hybrid plans, and especially after learning that baby won't go to bed, but after learning about how we will be able to accommodate students who will not fit very easily into one of these plans. So I think that information is helpful.
So would someone like to just briefly summarize how we came to these two models and what you guys perceive as some really brief pros and cons?
Yep, I can kind of do that. Hybrid model number 1 was, this is the model that came out of the staff survey from earlier in June. When we asked, is there a model that you don't see listed here that you think we should consider? This was a model that came out from a couple of different folks, kind of written in different ways. But this idea that it was kind of said to us, do you realize you could solve a lot of the childcare issues if we thought about taking pre-K through 6th grade and spreading them out across all of our buildings? And as our district leadership team kind of started weighing that and talking through, it became more feasible to us. I think at first it was kind of how would we do that? But the more we talked, the more that we could envision. For instance, at the middle school, there are a lot of classroom spaces that have a removable wall. So those are huge spaces. And so putting an entire class of, say, 24 4th graders in one of those rooms would really allow for social distancing. And so the more that we talked, we started to see that option was really viable. Hybrid model number 2 is really the place where we kind of started in our brainstorming. So when our team initially brainstormed hybrid models, we were thinking pre-K through 12th grade, how do we get half of them on site, half of them off site at a time? And so when we thought about that, we thought about things like half day, then you see every kid every day. But then that didn't seem very feasible for transportation costs, especially, and for cleaning in between groups of kids, let alone serving lunch. We would essentially be serving lunch twice because we'd have to catch the group that's leaving and then get the group that's coming. So we were able to eliminate that based on logistics. So then we put out all the proposals, like a Monday, Wednesday group, a Tuesday, Thursday group, Fridays off for everybody, or Monday, Tuesday group, Wednesday off, Thursday, Friday. We thought about 1 week on, 1 week off. Like, we did all of those kinds of models, and the staff overwhelmingly said that there was one overwhelming with another second choice that were the Monday, Wednesday group with the Tuesday, Thursday group, Fridays off. And right behind that was the Monday, Tuesday group, Thursday, Friday group, Wednesdays off. And so that's what we're calling hybrid model number 2. If if it's possible cleaning wise, we would go with that Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday group, Friday off. The pros and cons, the big, I am going to say what I think, and then if somebody else on our district leadership team wants to correct me with their thinking, I think the biggies, the big pros for hybrid delivery model 1 is getting our youngest learners face-to-face. We know that it will be a huge challenge anytime that our youngest learners are in a remote learning situation. Childcare issues are minimized. And then I think probably the biggie is that teachers are only planning and delivering one instruction model at a time. When we jump down to hybrid model number 2, then virtually all of our teachers have kids in front of them all day while kids are online all day. And then they switch. And so that feels like a planning nightmare. I think the pros for delivery model number 2 are that we have all students on site 2 days a week. We're able to check in, we see them all. We're able to, establish relationships that way, check on social and emotional well-being, safety checks, that kind of thing. It's also pretty easy for us to be agile in this model. We can switch this pretty quickly because nobody's moving rooms. It's just half the kids are at home. I think the cons for this model are we shooting ourselves in our own foot with childcare issues? And I would say that overwhelmingly from staff that have offered opinions to different district leadership team members, those are the 2 pros and cons. So the ones that are super, super in favor of hybrid model number 1, that's about, oh, that would be so amazing. We don't have to worry so much about childcare. The ones that are super, super passionate about hybrid model number 2, it's our middle school and high school kids need to be at school multiple times a week too, and how can we not be seeing them? So district leadership team members, do you want to weigh in on any of that?
Yep. So this is Krista. I would echo the childcare being kind of the biggie on hybrid model number 1 and alleviating that. We had 489 survey responses that said out of that 1810, 489 families said they don't have childcare if their children are not in school. Our staff members, 43 of our staff members said the same thing, that they don't have childcare. So that's a huge one for me. But I also echo what Denise said about not seeing our 7 through 12 students. There's a safety factor in all of that. I don't know if any of you, I'm trying not to assume negative here about any of our families, but, early on in this, there was a report about calls to DHS being way, way, way down because teachers are mandatory reporters. So there is a safety factor by not seeing grades 7 through 12 students for extended periods of time. I also think, I don't know how feasible online learning for an extended period of time is for any student in grades 7 through 12. Now, knowing that we may be a little bit more flexible and be able to switch into these models more fluidly is helpful. I do think that is a con for number 1, is if we decided to do number 1 and bring all of our pre-K through 6 kids back on site and move some of those upper grades to UHS or UMS, we would need to commit to this model for a pretty significant amount of time, simply because of all of the logistics involved with physically moving classrooms. This is not something that we could just switch on a dime, versus number 2, where if we had to go into that model, as Denise shared, we're not moving classrooms around, so we could conceivably do this, if we found out on a Thursday or Friday that we had some outbreaks and we needed to reduce our capacity, we could conceivably do this on Monday. So my 2 cents. Full disclosure, I have an 8th grade daughter, so some of my feelings about hybrid model number 2 with students not being able to learn online are from personal experience.
I appreciate the comments. So
I think that they both have done a really nice job at it, explaining both the pros and cons, and I don't have anything else to add.
And I also think the reality is that we can make either happen. And so for the district leadership team, we are happy to make either one of these happen. And I'm saying that only because the reality is that we see the pros and cons for each and like pretty vividly. And we're happy to make either one of them happen. We just need to start planning for whichever one it could possibly be.
So is it conceivable that one or both of these systems could be isolated to one building where there's an outbreak? I mean, does that enter into it at all?
I think the only one that is feasible to do that with is number 2.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I also think it's very plausible that an outbreak of virtually any kind could push us right into shutdown too, skipping over either of those hybrid models.
Yeah.
So I think that's the other piece of this. We honestly don't have a good sense of how much we would use a hybrid model or not.
It seems much more feasible that we would be in a situation where one or more sites have to close for 14 days or 2 weeks and then go back face to face. And that seems far more feasible now than it did when we first started talking about hybrid models.
Yeah, Krista, I think that's a really good point. My heart kind of breaks for the amount of work that goes into this and the vision, and expecting that we don't have really good information on metrics that are going to trigger closures, that like this might not be used to its fullest extent. But I hope it is. I hope they are, because I do think that there's a lot of creative ideas here. So Catherine, I don't know if we want to do roll call and we each just say which one.
I have a couple questions before we do that, just so that I can get some clarity. When voting on this, would you prefer us to think about it as a short-term solution or as a long-term solution? Because I think that determines which option, I helps with that.
That's a really good question, Ashley. I don't see number 1 as a short-term solution. Not as short as number 2 could potentially be. Number 1, with the logistics of moving, not only would take a few days to move into that model if we needed to, but also would necessitate basically a longer term commitment, because we'd be relocating students to other buildings, other grade levels. Yeah.
For the hybrid option number 2, have we reached out to childcare facilities like within the district separate from us so that we could facilitate some of that childcare issue that would come up? Have we had discussions with them, like to say, hey, you would see some kids on a Monday, and then on like a Monday, Tuesday potentially schedule, and you see the other kids on like a Thursday, Friday, but then what happens on that middle, like either that Friday or that Wednesday?
We haven't. And I might bring Ashley Myers into this conversation. She's been part of all of these teams and all of this planning, and is trying to do a ton of work balancing different requirements because of the childcare piece. But hybrid model number 2 does present some challenges for things like adventure time. On the off days when students aren't physically in school, we would be unable to provide childcare. And so for families that use our wraparound services in adventure time, they don't typically have a backup childcare because they don't need one. You know, they're here, they're at school, and then we take care of them before and after school.
Yeah.
So Ashley, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I think that was the main highlight regarding when it says it negatively impacts the financial sustainability of Adventure Time preschool and childcare. With that said, is we're one of the only districts that offer the full day preschool, so that majority of our staff, that how we financially sustain is through parent fees. So if we were to only offer the hybrid model where they were the AB model, then we would have to, if we're going to start that way or whenever we went into that, then we'd have to look at refunding families for that other time, because we wouldn't be providing any full day or wraparound care. It would also be interesting for what we would do for before and after, because then we'd have to determine, are we going to offer before and after for K through 5th grade on the days that the kids are there? but only a couple of days. So then we'd have to look at refiguring our fee structure as well. And with the other childcare sites out there, there potentially could be places that would offer that. But I think that if we were into that state, that they would also be trying to figure out if what their capacity could look like. Because a lot of the daycares, then they would potentially not be adding students on because they're trying to reduce their student staff ratios and classroom ratios as well. So that's probably the number one concern in terms of preschool and adventure time for both our financial sustainability for parents, for staff, for everything would be that model of the AB, how that would work from that standpoint.
In follow-up to that, for the first option, if we were to go with hybrid 1, is there for classes where like there's lab work or however we're deciding to do band, choir, gym, whatever, is there an option to bring some of those kids in maybe one day a week so that we do have that touch base? Or
so that's something that we would need to figure out, and we would need to see like what classes, lab-based classes, you know, some of our CTE classes, what classes would really face-to-face, some sort of, you know, work in that regard would be imperative. And so we would have to figure out a schedule for that. I don't know, I can't say to you right now whether that would be as frequently as once a week, simply because of space, but that is one consideration that we were looking at. Yep.
So between the two of these, just so that I'm clear, we have option 1, which covers childcare. We make sure the littles get the services they need, and we have the potential maybe to bring in 7th through 12th grade for a touch base of some sort for a short-term basis, versus option 2, where we run into issues with childcare and adventure time and after-school care. And we don't necessarily have a potential solution for some of that. Is that correct?
I think those are accurate. I think to assume that we would be able to see every student in grades 7 through 12 is probably inaccurate.
Okay. Okay. I'm just trying to weigh.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
no, absolutely. It is truly, it's like the best of two bad decisions, right? Or two bad choices is what it feels like, because there are truly, I don't see a clear, I don't know.
No perfect solution.
That's what it is.
Right.
And you guys are like your leadership team. I want to just say, and all of our teachers, our whole like staff, there's going to be pushback no matter what it looks like.
You're absolutely right.
I think that
yes,
you should feel supported by your board, because this is so much work that's gone into this. And so just know, you know, I hope that when we do have an inevitable pushback, that we can kind of come together as a team and feel really good about our decision. And I think we should, and understand that no one knows what they're doing right now. No industry, no industry does, no parent does. You know, I'm trying to work from home and potentially, you know, have my kindergartner have remote learning. So like, I understand on a very small level compared to teachers who are going to be doing that. So anyway, I guess I just want to share a message of empathy and support, no matter kind of what the outcome is.
Thank you.
I agree, but I have one more question. Sorry. I just keep having, I thought a lot. Then for option 2, where we have the 2 days on, 3 days online for the littles, are they, if they're in daycare, are they, or childcare of some sort, is there going to be a possibility for them to still continue to do learning? Because I mean, does that make sense? Like they can get this stuff, but they're going to be in a daycare situation during the day, and then they get home, they have dinner, they do bedtime. How do we, especially if it's a mandatory, they have to be there, they have to get the stuff done. Is there a way for us to accomplish that, or does it become just on the parents?
That's a great question, and I think another consideration that we've weighed. Every child will have a device next year. Josh and the IT team are working overtime to make sure that we have an updated device in every student's hand. Carrie and her crew have been working on internet access for our families. So conceivably, when you're talking about our youngest learners, if they're here with us, we can get kindergartners up and running on a Chromebook, for example, pretty quickly. We can show them what icons to use and where to go and all of that. So there would have to be some considerations for that. But to expect any little bitty to be self-guided is probably unrealistic. So that would really vary with their daycare situation. Yep.
Does that cause
capacity for Des Moines daycares or Polk County daycares to accommodate different school district schedules? I mean, there's a shortage of daycare providers anyway. So like, Ashley, I'm not sure what percentage of our students are like 4th and 5 will even have access to daycare.
My bigger question is if legally we have to be providing a certain level of education, like we were talking about earlier, that there's a certain level.
Yes.
If we go to the ABAB method or AA space BB, whatever, can we fulfill that? I guess is my question. Like, I don't want us to be held to, like, at a state level to a standard that if we have a breakdown of how we're up, like we have to go to a hybrid method if we can. Does that make sense? I'm sorry.
Yes. So I can speak a little bit. So yes, during those 3 days that students are not on site, they would be provided with learning opportunities that they would be required to participate in. They wouldn't necessarily need to do it at a certain time. So that might be by video or by lessons that they do online, or worksheets that they took home with them, or sorting activities, or a variety. But they will be provided instruction that they should participate in on those 3 days. And part of the plan that we didn't get to is having a tracking system in place so that we know if families are participating on those at-home days or not. And if they're not, then it's incumbent upon us to reach out and figure out why and problem solve with them. But there is the expectation that regardless of where they're at on those days that they're not with us, that they are participating in the learning opportunities.
Thank you. I just wanted to, especially with the difference in ages between the two options and how that would work, I just wanted to get a little clarification. I appreciate it.
Okay, is it possible now that we could have a motion for a vote on B? No, sorry, A1.
Should the motion include which model?
No, I would say that we are motioning to vote, and then you can pick one of them in a roll call.
Okay, then I would motion to vote on the hybrid delivery model.
Second.
Good. Okay. So is Mary Beth on?
I am. So this is Mary Beth. And so we have a motion for the hybrid delivery model by Downs, seconded by Smith. And let's go roll call. So Stacy Anderson.
I would vote for the hybrid model number 2.
Ashley Anderson.
I would vote for number 1.
Give me just a minute. I'm writing these down. Downs.
Number 1.
Smith.
Number 2.
Schmitz.
Hybrid model 1.
Number 2.
Oh, shoot.
And Hauser.
2.
Okay, so it's hybrid model number 2 has 4 votes and hybrid model number 1 has 3.
Okay. And let's just hope we don't have to use either one.
Amen.
Or if we do, for very long.
Thank you.
I do appreciate you framing it that we hope this is a short-term solution.
Very much.
Okay, so thanks for all the discussion. So let's move to B, which is the addition of an extra in-service day.
Yep, I'd be happy to provide any background if you need that.
I'm prepared.
I think you kind of have.
Okay, let's just go.
This is Smith. I'll move to recommend the calendar change to add pre-service time in order.
I'll second.
Professional development.
Oh, I jumped the gun. I'll second.
You're good. We do a roll call.
Yes. So motion to change the proposed extra in-service day was made by Smith, seconded by Ashley. For Downs.
It was a little hard to hear you, Mary Beth, so you might want to repeat.
By Smith, seconded by Ashley Anderson, to change the calendar to add an extra in-service day. So question was your vote for Downs.
Aye.
Okay.
Who'd you say?
Smith?
Aye.
Stacy Anderson?
Aye.
I think you said my name, so aye.
Thank you. Sarah Geiser?
Aye.
Schmitz?
Aye.
Aye.
That passes.
Thank you. Unanimous. Okay, so can we move then to the decisions on C for Rolling Green? Do we need discussion?
No.
Okay, may I have a motion then on C1?
Smith moved to maintain the starting date of Rolling Green.
I
Second. Okay, thank you, Brianna.
Person that seconded that, please.
This is Sarah. I do have a quick question on Rolling Green. When we're talking about the start date, are we going to have further discussion about numbers prior to? We're going to be receiving more information, correct?
So what the vote means tonight, Sarah, this is Krista, is that we are planning to move forward with the July 23rd start date. It's anticipated that as we monitor the cases and case counts and all of that and get that additional guidance, we do have another board meeting between now and when they start. So as we get closer to the date, we would determine what delivery model we would be starting in. So whether we're starting face-to-face, online, hybrid, but we're planning to start face-to-face.
Right. So I understand that. My concern is, though, that I want to make sure that my vote in favor of that start date includes masks for staff and students, and then also takes into consideration the idea of social distancing and what that's going to look like at Rolling Green.
Agreed.
So I feel like I'm in favor of the start date, but I'm in favor of it with those
conditions.
Yeah. So I don't feel comfortable voting if we haven't clearly established what that's going to look like. So I don't know how. I'm just one vote, and I just don't know how to move forward with that without that in place.
Hey, Lauren, in light of our previous discussion, do you have an update on when your committee, because I thought I remembered your team is going to get back together, take into consideration all of the discussion that took place tonight, and then we would be ready to come with sort of the plan to update the board to make sure that we were within bounds?
Yeah, we have our next team meeting on Thursday, and the priorities, certainly number one is going to be Rolling Green and exactly what you're asking about in terms of recommendations, and secondly would be getting what PPE we need coming as quickly as we can now to move forward. The only thing I can say is in regards to hopefully what we recommend will be in line with what you're thinking in regards to social distancing. It is the toughest topic to tackle with the assumption that all of our kids are coming back. So, it's going to take creativity, and it's another one of those things that not everybody is going to be on the same page with in regards to that. But we certainly, the goal will be, as Krista said, for the July meeting, that we would have specific recommendations for how we're going to bring Rolling Green kids back and staff back in regards to social distancing and face coverings, etc.
So I guess I don't know, I'm looking for some input from fellow board members. Can we move forward with a vote with the assumption that that our consideration will be?
Sarah, I feel like there's like two levels here. There's like the implementation plan, and then there's what we actually need to work on.
Right. Right.
I think that our administration today was asking us like for direction on their implementation plan. And I think since we were unanimous, at least for folks who spoke up about the face coverings, that I think we can trust that that's going to be in there. So I think when we vote on this, it's including all of that discussion about implementation that we had at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay, I can be comfortable with that if we're.
I think that we'll get more information at our next board meeting, but I think the commitment that they either start on the 20th, I think they need to know that, and then we can work on the details.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would challenge just Catherine and Steve, don't wait to send us information till the next board meeting. Like if these are finalized, we need them, because to be together as a leadership in the community, we need that information as soon as possible.
Right. So may I have a motion for C1?
I think there's already a motion.
I already made the motion.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And there's already a second also, I think. So.
Okay.
I'm sorry, this is Mary Beth. Smith made the motion, and I was not able to identify who seconded that.
I think Bree, didn't you?
I did.
Yep.
Okay, Sarah Geiser seconded that.
Yes.
So
Yes.
roll call. Hauser,
Yes.
Mitz,
Yes.
Sarah Geiser,
Yes.
Ashley Anderson,
Yes.
Stacy Anderson,
Yes.
Smith,
Aye. Yes.
Oh, yes.
Thank you. That motion carried unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Then we have the principal position. Unless there is any question, may I have a motion?
This is Smith. I'll move to appoint Miss Wilson.
Okay.
Down second.
Okay.
All right. Stacy Anderson,
Yes.
Ashley Anderson,
Yes.
Sarah Schmitz,
Yes.
Sarah Geiser,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Hauser,
Yes.
Downs.
Yes.
That's unanimous.
Mhm. All right, then we have some additional leadership changes. Moving some people. Do we have any questions on that? And if not, may I have a motion?
Move to approve.
I'll
Second.
second.
Can you identify yourself, please? That was
Right.
down.
Ashley second.
Downs made the motion and Ashley seconded.
Thank you. Roll call. Hauser,
Yes.
Downs,
Yes.
Mitz,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Stacy Anderson,
Yes.
Sarah Geiser,
Yes.
Ashley Anderson.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys. Okay, now we're going to skip down. Okay, I was led to believe we need to do G and I.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Can I comment? Dr. Watson's documentation and plan here was remarkable. I was really having until I read through it. It's the format. I mean, it's remarkable. The only thing I would add is if we do have a mask policy for the school, that it extends some way to activities. And I don't know what that looks like, the details of that, and I don't know what's safe for athletes. I would trust Dr. Watson to integrate a mask policy into this somehow, or a face covering policy, especially for spectators inside. So again, I don't know what that looks like, but I would feel if that component could be added to this somehow, feel very comfortable with it.
I want to state before we take a vote that I think Dr. Watson did an amazing job with this. I'm still going to be sticking with my position that I had earlier this summer, and that I'm not sure these activities are necessarily safe. I understand that all of that it provides for our kids in a mental stability sort of way. I just very much worry about people getting sick. I second what Judy says, that if we implement this and we implement a mask policy, that we do as much as we possibly can to combine those two things to keep everyone as safe as possible.
Okay, good feedback.
I'd like to ask a question on that. The adults, with respect to coaches, directors, the mask policy would be no issue. But I just want to clarify that you are asking that spectators for any event would then wear a mask as well.
I think indoors, and I don't have the authority as one board member to say that, but I'm just I wonder if we ask that for going back to school, should that extend? And I think it should, to all activities in our schools. And so I do think that for indoor activities, I would support that. But again, I don't know I don't know how other board members feel.
I will say from my perspective, Ashley Anderson, that I would prefer masks be asked for our spectators both inside and outside. But that's my personal opinion, again, not for the whole board, but I would prefer both places that we try to get masks. Just based on the science that has come out, that like 6 feet is great, masks make it even better. We can socially distance outside, I understand that, but I think masks cover our butts a little bit, and I would approve of that.
I do understand the PR issues, Dr. Watson, related to that. My husband spends 2 hours a day listening to phone callers complaining about DMPS policy. So I'm very, I know that our opinion is not necessarily shared with the community. But I think an easy cover would be that if our students are expected to wear them, then anyone in our buildings is expected to wear them, if possible.
Correct, and that's something we can certainly start working on now and tie back into the health and safety and the mask issue there.
I don't know if I should get that email out. We received an email from a parent in regards to face masks in general, and I think that they had a really good point that I wouldn't mind saying out loud, which is that as a district, they question what lesson do we want our students to take away from the coming months in regards to all of this stuff and what they're going to carry on into the rest of their lives, and that the Urbandale district preaches character counts, which has emphasis on pillars of character such as caring, respect, responsibility, and citizenship. And I think that going off of that message, it should be a pretty easy push to help explain, like, do we want our kids to walk away with a sense of community and really make sure, like, to put that sense of community in other people's what's the word I want? Like to push back, to like take a moment with their own convenience and their own personal preferences and think about others. And I think that that is a responsible and respectful way to move forward with all the things that not only our school district, but our city believes in. I mean, we read a character counts message at every single city council meeting. And I don't think it would be that much of a push to say that this is us showing that in a really helpful way during this time.
So
That said, may I have a motion?
I would move to approve the summer activities plan with the caveat that Dr. Watson and his team will look into implementing a mask policy.
Smith, second.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion by Downs, second by Smith, to approve the summer activities plan with the with Dr. Watson looking into a face mask policy implementation. And we'll do a roll call vote. Sarah Geiser,
Yes.
Schmitz,
Yes.
Hauser,
Yes.
Ashley Anderson,
I'm still a no, but I believe in masks.
Downs,
Yes.
and Smith.
Yes.
So that motion carried 6-1.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, we'll move to I, which is a continuation of providing internet access for families.
Yes, Smith, I'll move to continue to pay for internet access.
Downs, second.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion by Smith, second by Downs to continue the internet access. I'll do a roll call vote. Hauser,
Yes.
Schmitz,
Yes.
Sarah Geiser,
Yes.
Ashley Anderson,
Yes.
Stacey Anderson,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Downs.
Yes.
That motion carried unanimously.
I'd like to see when our staff has capacity to do work that's not emergent, looking into what this would be to do permanently. I think providing internet access for our students who can't afford it would be a really interesting thing to explore.
You rather eat a matter baby?
I agree with that. I think it adds to our how much we want to work towards equity amongst our students, and I think it's a really quick and inexpensive way to kind of bridge that.
Mary Beth, with regards to our vote for the summer, I don't know how it got by, but I couldn't unmute myself, so I never voted on that because my vote was actually the same as it was last time. No, just out of an abundance of caution.
Okay, I'm sorry, Stacey. I'm sorry. So that was a 5-2 vote on the.
No problem. No worries.
Okay.
Okay, the other item that we probably really do need to review because it involves new hires is the personnel report. And normally that would be in a consent agenda, but may I have a motion to approve that so they can get their contracts?
Motion to approve.
That's second.
Okay, so motion by Schmitz, is that correct? And second by Smith?
Correct.
That's correct.
Downs?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Stacey Anderson?
Yes.
Ashley Anderson?
Yes.
Sarah Geiser?
Yes.
Schmidt?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Sarah Schmitz.
There you go.
Yes.
Pronunciate. Hauser?
Yes.
That motion carried unanimously on personnel.
Okay. So at this point, thank you for all your hard work. Thank you for all the staff who were patient with all of our questions. I'm hoping that we can continue this exchange, and I would invite you to forward survey data that you get from the students or whomever, and just keep us informed. We don't need to act on it, but if we all had this good information, it would be a good thing. I appreciate that there are enough devices for all of our kids. That was a question I had. And
Catherine, are you wrapping up the meeting? Because this is Sarah and I have.
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is kind of going in a different direction. But I would like to ask Steve, when at, I don't know if this is the appropriate time to bring this up, but at the July 13th meeting, if we can have some type of plan from district leaders on how we're going to move forward with some anti-racist conversations with our students and staff, and creating a plan for this next school year that I would like us to stay fairly on top of over the next 12 months. And I know that we do have a new position starting July 1, and so I don't think July 13th is an unreasonable time to ask to have a plan in place for the next 12 months at least. So I guess what I'm saying is I would like to see us hit the ground running and have something at least presented to. So I don't know if I guess I don't specifically know how to bring this forward, but it's kind of want to lay that out there.
I agree. And I think with the knowledge that that's 2 weeks in, you know, I don't want to speak for you, Sarah, but I can't imagine we're expecting like detailed curriculum and a 100-page report, but like, I love it.
And again, the thing I'd have to confirm is, you know, I'm not in HR. I don't know when he's starting. Lauren, you know if he's gotten released from Des Moines yet? I would be hesitant to make promises without talking to him first.
Then Steve, I guess I would say if he's not going to be on contract, then I would ask that that you just assign it somewhere else, that a plan come forward to us as soon as possible. I don't think we have the I just don't think that we have any more time to wait.
Wait, I thought we did know. Can someone, I guess I'm not sure what's going on.
I thought it was July 1 is what my recollection is July 1, but maybe I'm wrong.
That is contract, but
that is correct. But what was approved is that it was contingent upon a release from DMPS, which we're still patiently awaiting, hoping that it happens soon, very soon. But we can't move forward until we get that, which was a part of the initial approval.
Is there a work plan for that position or something that if that position's presence wouldn't be available, there would be, you know, a summary of what their work would be for the first year in a little bit more detail that we could get?
We have those actions identified in our strategic plan. So even if he's not able to start on July 1st, we do have strategic actions that we've identified, things like the equity audit and some work around SCBMH that will proceed regardless of when he starts.
And I think that everybody recognizes that given the climate and the activities that have occurred in our society, that needs to be a huge focus.
High priority.
I can share that several of the buildings already this summer, teachers are participating in book studies. Obviously those are voluntary because only the administrators are on contract right now. But absolutely you would, it's appropriate that you expect to be able to see that throughout the year. I don't know that on July 13th that you will see a detailed concrete action plan of what those steps are, but absolutely there would be no reason for you not to have that expectation that there is continued focused effort on ensuring that our schools are taking the steps to make sure that all of our students are not only welcome, but actively looking for and removing barriers that are causing students and families to not feel like they are having full access and opportunity within our system.
And if we're done, just a couple comments, Catherine, if I may. Just wanted to thank the board for your support tonight. I know it's very uneasy. We feel the same uneasiness, but we feel much better now. I hope you understand I've had some conversations with a couple of you about other districts communicating things. I went in and looked at their plans, and again, their plans, we have pretty much all the work done that they've done. We chose not to intentionally share those things until we had some concrete decisions made, because as we've learned, sometimes when you send things out, you get a lot of questions when you don't have answers, and that puts people in a bad spot. So we really feel much better about knowing, hey, we are supported. There's one team here. I mean, it's important that, you know, all of us see each other as we are on the same team in leadership. And tonight was an outstanding meeting, and it showed, again, we can not necessarily agree 100% of the time, but had some great dialogue. So I appreciate the board for that. And I thank the team leaders for speaking up and sharing, and all the people that attended tonight, for, you know, those on the committees, all the great work they're doing to prep and get ready for, again, possibly another strange year. But, you know, I'm just very appreciative of everyone and all the work you're doing and all the thought that is going through this. And I hope the board now understands, again, the whole intent was we couldn't wait till the July 13th meeting and move forward, knowing with Rolling Green starting. So I appreciate you officials, Catherine and Sarah, for agreeing to meet, even though it was a little maybe not clear about the direction we were going, but it helps us. I know district administrators really have to feel much better now about moving forward, that we're all on the same page. So I appreciate that greatly.
Thanks, Steve. Between Steve and Catherine, can we add that to the agenda then for the next meeting, please?
Of what Sarah said?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Certainly. Sure. And we'll meet Catherine on that Monday. We'll touch base on the 6th.
Okay, may I have a motion for adjournment?
Down, so moved.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, who's second?
Anderson.
Anderson.
Ashley.
Oh, sorry.
A motion by Down, second by Anderson, Ashley Anderson, to adjourn. I'm going to say all in favor, aye, and aye.
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 Opposed? Sign. All right, that's unanimous, and the time is 9:05.
Thank you guys so much, everyone, for coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
The best meeting with all these people. I really appreciate it.